Since you have heard this on numerous occasions, I'll do my best to be brief. This was presented to you at the Real Estate Committee. I'm just hitting on the high points of that. This proposal was changed significantly based on the Historic Resources Board direction. The density, the height, and the Beach Street facade were all significantly reduced. In terms of function and program elements, the sky bar was removed from the tower element because essentially the tower element was removed. But the other architectural features and concepts were left in place. As Brad said, that's been pretty well received by most, including some opponents, and we wanted to keep that concept together. We now have ground floor retail and commercial and above ground condominium residential units. That project was supported by the Historic Resources Board and last week overwhelmingly by CCAC with a 19-1 vote. Again, the concept is the same. It's obviously one building, but it presents sort of as three buildings. A wing on the east side is 7 stories, or that mass is 7 stories. On the west side, it's a 5-story mass, and in the middle, it's a 12-story mass, an elliptical shape that shapes away from El Cortez. And just visually, the comparison between the previous project, which is here, and the new project, a few different angles of that, bird's eye view from the east, and finally from the west. Other highlights of the project, as Brad said, this is now conforming entirely with the 2006 PDO, even though our application was timely filed under the 1992 PDO. In addition, because of the HRB support, there's no longer a need for a site development permit or the findings that go along with it, nor is there a need for you to approve any variances or affordable housing incentives or anything else. And in some key areas with PDO, we significantly exceed some of the goals for private outdoor space, common outdoor space, planted levels, parking, etc. And our unit mix is pretty generous to the 2 and the 3 bedroom side. Most of the units are 2 and 3 bedroom. Again, a view from the street level. I think we can go through these, please, Brad. And then finally, just on this view, the comment from Mr. Pugh and our own design team was to really make sure to differentiate those wing buildings from the central mass. And we think we've done that. And in addition, this came from the Historic Resources Board. You'll notice the pattern of the windows of El Cortez was used as inspiration for the pattern of the windows on that wing building. Obviously, it's a very different architecture, and it's a very different set of materials, but we wanted there to be some nod to El Cortez in terms of the fenestration there. In addition, our materials board, which you've seen before, the color scheme and the warm color palette is taken from El Cortez as well. I did want to get into a few of the other issues, partly because Director Kilkenny specifically requested that, or invited either side to do so. At the Real Estate Committee meeting, he asked that the staff review in a written way the Mills Act and the agreement affecting real property. Staff has done that in your report, and we have nothing to add to that, but would be happy to answer any questions with those issues. He also invited us to talk about some of the historic issues that were brought up more recently by some on the other side, and rather than put you in the middle of it, he said, she said, I'm passing out the actual staff report from the Historic Resources Board staff, who covered a lot of these just sort of factual historic issues, and much of what I say comes directly from there. And the basics are that when El Cortez was originally constructed in 1927, the parcel we're talking about today was not part of that hotel, it wasn't part of the grounds, it wasn't part of the development plan, it was separately owned, and it was in fact occupied by houses at the time. Those houses were demolished at some point and replaced by what was known as the Caribbean Wing, which was a 9-story hotel addition on the back of El Cortez. And there was a statement by one of the opponents at your last meeting that your obligation is to only approve what is consistent with what was there in 1927. And that's something that we rejected. I believe you rejected it, but more importantly, even the Historic Resources Board flatly rejected that notion. One of the board members said the notion that you can freeze history and return to 1927 is not what we do here. And that came from someone who actually opposed the previous design and supported this one. Next. The Caribbean wing was explicitly not historic, and it was demolished at the request of CCDC, the community, and everybody else who ever saw that building in its form before it was demolished. It didn't contain any historic resources at the time, and it does not contain any historic resources today, and that's according to the Historic Resources Board and staff. And this is following up on another point that was brought up, I think, erroneously to you, which is that the designation of El Cortez, both at the local and the national level, is based on the architecture of the building, and the resolution designating it on the local level is attached to that staff report. The language is, quote, specifically the exterior of the building. It wasn't designated because of anything that was or was not happening on the parcel behind it. The National Registry recognizes the historic significance, and in addition it recognizes, or it adds significance based on the architect, who had some rather famous buildings in Los Angeles under their name as well. But in no case was it contingent on or based upon, or did the actual designation say anything about the presence or absence of anything behind the lot. What the opponents were referencing is the application to the National Park Service, which did include a description of what was happening on the entire site. And then, of course, starting with your 1992 plan, your 1993 Cortez Focus Plan, and most recently your 2006 Community Plan Update, it is always designated the site for housing. The FARs range from 8 to 10, depending on which PDO you're talking about. The current one allows 160,000 square feet of building on this site, which we are well below. The last thing I want to do is get into the construction defect issues, but since the developer, frankly, has taken such a beating on this in public for so long, I did want to note anecdotally that just a few months ago, the San Diego Union Tribune did a best of San Diego, and they asked their readers to vote on the best place to live downtown, not the best building to look at or the best building to cherish, but the best place to live. And El Cortez finished in the top 3 along with Diamond Terrace and the Meridian. So those that seek to somehow stop the new development by tearing down the old development, I think, are in the minority. And finally, I just had to respond to counsel for the opponents in the paper the other day noted that somehow this process has lacked some careful consideration and due process. And just to give you the scorecard, we've been to 23 public meetings in 21 months. 7 at the Save Our Heritage Organization, 6 at the Historic Resources Board, and that's not counting 3 meetings that were canceled for lack of a quorum, 5 at CCAC and 5 at CCDC. And by the way, we still have to go to the Planning Commission and the City Council, not to mention 7 articles in the Union Tribune. The notion that this project has somehow slipped through the cracks or not been given careful review by you or anybody else, I think is an odd comment, but I throw it out there. If, on the other hand, council was referring to the agreement affecting real property and the fact that somehow that's been taken out of order, I would note that before we came to you, Mr. Richter would not allow us to come to you, frankly, until he had a written opinion, not only from your outside counsel, but as well also the city attorney, basically laying it out that it's their opinion that we could and should. He did that over our objections, and it delayed the project a number of months. Looking back on it, I think it was the prudent thing to do. You may also recall that you were sued on the day of a real estate committee meeting about a year ago, and that filing of a lawsuit 3 minutes before the meeting caused you to delay that meeting, talk to your counsel before coming back. So the notion that this has been rushed or not been given a good due process, I think, is erroneous. We want to thank you for your support. Our entire architectural team is here to answer any questions, and at the risk of being presumptuous, if this ends up being our last meeting before you, I did want to take the opportunity to thank your staff, in particular Brad Richter. We certainly have had our disagreements and frustrations, but I think that his professionalism and his perseverance through this entire process, given what I perceive to be a very heavy workload for him, as well as our opponents and the controversy surrounding this project, we certainly appreciate all the work that he's put into this. I think he's done an excellent job representing you and protecting your interests and the organization's interests, which in the end I think benefits all of us. So thank you, Brad, and I thank the chair. I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions and perhaps get a little time in response after the opponents. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.